All right, folks, this is Harris Sultan. Australia just experienced the worst massacre since the 1996 Port Arthur massacre, in which Martin Bryant killed 35 people. In the wake of that massacre, the Australian government decided to take away all the guns from Australian public because they understood one thing: statistical probability, which means that the more people will have access to guns, the more chances you have to committing massacres. Now, understand this point and hold on to this point: statistical probability. Our argument is that the more Muslims you have, statistically speaking, the more chances of terrorist attacks you're going to have. The evidence is undeniable, it's unquestionable. How many more terrorist attacks you need to have to understand that? Just yesterday, while these two father and sons were massacring Jews, 5 Muslims were arrested in Germany for planning to run over ordinary women and children at a Christmas market. What more do you need? Islam is a gift that keeps on giving, but we're not allowed to say it. We're not allowed to blame Islam. These 2 Muslims killed 11 people. Most of them are Jews. I think 2 of them police officers who got killed in the shootout. One of them, Sajid Akram, his son, Naveed Akram, 24 years old, Muslim, got his religious training in Australia. You've got to ask these questions. What are they teaching in those religious schools? So it's just a matter of statistical probability. We're not saying that all Muslims are bad. We're not saying every Muslim is a terrorist. Nobody's making that claim. That is absurd. But the bar is really, really low with this community. That, oh, so what if we have some terrorists? We also have doctors and nurses and heroes, as it turned out to be the case with Ahmed Al-Ahmed, this brave Australian Muslim guy who is confirmed to be a Syrian immigrant. He risked his life to save his fellow Jews from other Muslim terrorists. Yes, I know some people are saying he's Christian. Look, you don't have to invent these stories. You don't have to clutch at straws. Okay? Our narrative is not under any danger. The guy is a Muslim. Yes, there can be good Muslims too, but that is not what we're questioning. We're questioning that as a host country, whether that's Australia or Britain or France or Germany or America or Canada, all of these host countries that invite immigrants, what options do they have? Now ask yourself this question. If you invited 100 Chinese immigrants, how many of them are going to be terrorists? The kind who fly planes into buildings or randomly explode at bus stops and train stations. How many? 0. Now, if you invited 100 Indians, how many of them are going to be terrorists? Yeah, you might have some dodgy truck drivers, some insurance scams, some sex criminals, which is common across every community. Yes, even within that, there is a range. Some Muslim countries produce more sex criminals than other communities like Japan or China, for example. So the question is, with these host countries, when you have an array of options to choose from, Chinese or Indians or Muslims, who should you choose? Nobody's saying that if you invited 100 Muslims, all of them are going to be terrorists. No. But there is a big chance that out of 100 Muslims, some are going to be terrorists. So the question is, why are our governments playing Russian roulette with the lives of their citizens? Now, Australia doesn't have a habit of taking kindly to these massacres. As I said, last time when there was a massacre, they took away all the guns from all Australian people because they understood statistical probability. Now, are they going to start removing radical Muslims? It's not really that hard to identify them. They chant, gas the Jews, gas the Jews. Our government does nothing, but instead appeases them by rewarding them a state. They chant, where are the Jews? Where are the Jews? Chant, Khaybar, Khaybar, ya Yahud. Khaybar, Khaybar, ya Yahud. Do you know what that means? That means that we will do to the Jews that Muhammad did to them at Khaybar. Do you know what he did to them? Muhammad raided and attacked a Jewish tribe at Khaybar, took their wives as sex slaves, and the remaining Jews, he let them stay there on the condition that they give them 50% jizya, while Muslims only pay 2.5% zakat. That is jizya, by the way. And this is not some ancient history that today's Muslims don't know. They actually chant that. They actually say that. They've been attacking Jewish restaurants, throwing petrol bombs at them, and our government does absolutely nothing. This Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he has been appeasing them ever since October 7th happened. Not a single word. Only yesterday, he actually made a very pathetic post in which he didn't recognize anything. And then in his televised speech, he said, "Oh, our hearts go out to the Jewish community. This is an anti-Semitic attack." He still did not mention it's an Islamist anti-Semitic attack or it's a pro-Pali anti-Semitic attack. What is it? Why do our lefty woke politicians are too scared to call it out? Now, as I said, Australia doesn't have a history of taking kindly to these massacres. Australians are very angry. Australia is not like the UK. It really isn't. In the UK, they have normalized it. I can't even tell you how many terrorist attacks you've had in England. London Bridge stabbings, Lee Rigby's murder, so many other stabbings, bomb blasts. Like there's so much has happened in the UK that London's mayor himself has said that terrorism is just part and parcel of living in a big city. So you know what? Just shut up. But in Australia, yes, this is the worst massacre since 1996, but this is a first major Islamist terrorist attack because Australian agencies take a lot of pride in keeping terrorists out of Australia. But where there's smoke, there's fire. As I said, it's just a matter of statistical probability. If you have Muslims, then I'm sorry to say, a certain percentage of them are always going to do what they just did yesterday. So why should Western countries keep importing huge numbers of Muslims? This Albanese government actually gave 4,000 visas to Gazans. Now, I protested at that time, and how many of them do you think are not going to bring their ancient sectarian conflicts to the streets of Australia? How many of them? Even Asia, Australia's intelligence organization, said that we have absolutely no idea who these people are. They could be Hamas operatives. They have also given a lot of protection visas to Afghans, as we have seen in America. Who these Afghans are, you don't know them. Are they sympathetic to the Taliban, or they're going to have a mental breakdown and then they're going to become turncoats? We don't know any of that. It's because it's the ideology. It's an ideology, whether you're an African Muslim or a South Asian Muslim or a Middle Eastern Muslim. I don't understand why there is this appetite in the West to keep downplaying the threat of Islamism and jihadism. How many more people need to die for these politicians to understand that this ideology does not belong in the West? And it's not just terror, okay? The recent UK census shows that Muslims are the biggest beneficiaries of social housing, biggest recipients of welfare payments. They pay the least amount of tax. In the UK, Bangladeshis and Pakistanis are at the bottom of tax contribution. They are the least employed people. And then when it comes to crime, they only make up 6% of the UK population, yet they account for nearly 18% of all prison population. I'm sorry. If you give us a couple of heroes like the Syrian hero who saved the remaining Aussies from his fellow Muslim brothers, that doesn't cut it. Yes, you're going to bring in 100 Muslims. Some of them are going to be nurses, some of them are going to be doctors. A big portion of them are going to be dependent on social welfare payments, and some will be heroes, but some will also be terrorists. A risk that you are not going to run if you bring in immigrants from high quality countries. Sorry, that's what it is. There's quality in everything. There's quality in everything. And look at these online Muslim activists. They are so hypocritical, pathetic. They're clutching at straws. When the two terrorists turned out to be Muslims, oh, please don't judge our entire religion on the actions of these two. And we have 1,000 other terrorists in the last 10 years alone, but don't mind that. But then when the hero guy turns out to be Muslim, see, that's Islam. Now you got to judge Islam. You got to look at Islam from this angle. You got to feel bad for them. You know, every time there's a terrorist attack, they're like, half of them are like, yes, let's hope this is our guy. Teach those pesky Jews a lesson. And the other half is like, oh, please, God, don't be a Muslim. Don't be a Muslim. Please don't be a Muslim. Oh, God damn it. It is a Muslim. And then turns out, oh, there is some hope. One of the hero guys is a Muslim. Yay! Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. When I was growing up, I've been hearing since then that the Jewish lobby is very strong in the West. I want to know, who are the Jews that are running this Jewish lobby? Because if I were Jew, I would sack them. They're doing a terrible job. You guys can't even get your message across to Western politicians because all these Western politicians, they seem to be kissing asses of the Islamists. It is not that difficult to identify these radical Islamists. It's not that difficult. By the way, one of the guys was actually in the sights of our intelligence agencies and of the Australian Federal Police, but he was classified as not posing an immediate risk. That assessment turned out to be spot on. Would like to know who that intelligence officer was. A monumental mistake. And now 11 people are dead. As I said, it's the worst massacre since the 1996 Port Arthur massacre. Our point remains, Islam does not belong in the West. It just doesn't. The time for debates or discussions is over. They've proven time and time again that Islamic values do not mix with Western values. They do not mix. Everywhere you look at, Britain, France, Germany, Australia, the US, everywhere you look at, it's always one particular community. One, it's always them. And you know what? The longer they hold off a strong, meaningful action against the Islamists, the harder the blowback is going to be. The UK is on the cusp of a total collapse. Just a matter of time. I reckon if this had happened in London, I don't know what would have happened. Just because it's the first major Islamist terrorist attack in Australia since the Linseed Cafe, which they labeled him as a madman. He was a Muslim. He held some hostages, and I think a couple of people died in that. Just because we've only had 2 Islamist terrorist attacks on Australian soil, it doesn't mean that Australians can tolerate what's just happened. Australia is not like Britain. Aussies are not like that. I'm not urging any riots. I'm urging this pathetic, weak, lefty Albanese government to grow a freaking spine. If you want, I can tell you which Muslims are ticking time bombs and which Muslims are good Muslims, okay? Not all Muslims are bad. Not all Muslims. It would be absolutely disgusting to look at all Muslims from the same lens. If you had taken a strong action against those dozens of Muslims who were chanting gas the Jews, those Muslims who chant Khabar Khabar Ya Yahud, Muslims who threw petrol bombs at Jewish restaurants, if you had tried to change the culture, if you had not paid lip service, he actually didn't even pay any lip service. He didn't. He has been quiet as a mouse. He's been appeasing the Islamists. These pro-Palestine rallies have been radicalizing people. This father and son were inspired by their Muslim Brotherhood, by the evil actions of the Israeli governments against their fellow brothers in Gaza. That was it. And every weekend, we've seen these people come out in Melbourne, Sydney, London, Toronto, New York. They come out. They chant anti-Semitic slogans. Why is it ever the other way around? Why don't we see Jews going to mosques and committing terrorist acts? It just doesn't happen. It's never happened. It's always the other way around. And because of Western governments' reluctance to take a meaningful action against these radicals, they are actually bringing down the entire concept of multiculturalism. The Chinese, the Hong Kongers, the Indians, the Greeks and Italians and the Vietnamese, there are tons of communities who migrated, and the first and second generations totally integrated and assimilated. Totally. Yeah, they might have retained some cultural aspects which sometimes blow up into communal tension. That's negligible. At least there's no loss of life. But in this case, the first and second generation turns out to be worse than the original ones. Islam doesn't belong in the West. It just doesn't. This guy, Naveed Akram, was born and raised in Sydney. His father was a Pakistani migrant, Sajid Akram. That's what the US intelligence has confirmed. The Australian Federal Police is so scared, they haven't even commented on these 2 perpetrators. They've just said that they are father and sons, and they've given out their names. That's it. They haven't given any other information because they're so scared. So they can be identified. I am willing to give you my services, my vast knowledge on this community. I can help you identify which Muslim is a ticking time bomb and which Muslim is a good Muslim. It's not that hard. We can root out the bad weed from our garden.
We can't take away from the fact, first and foremost, that jihad is definitely part of our deen. And as Muslims, we should never ever shy away from this. And yes, there may be types of jihad, but of the peak of this jihad is that which the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about, and I'll read the hadith soon. And that is fighting in the path of Allah Azza wa Jal, a physical fight, not the fighting of the nafs.
If you really care about good Muslims, then you need to take out the bad ones. And by the way, I have to acknowledge this. I have never seen Muslim activists or social media Muslim personalities come out and condemn this attack the way they have done this time. What's changed? You know, in the past, they always used to say, I'm a Muslim, I don't have to apologize for other Muslims' actions. There's so many white American school shooters in America. Not every white American has to apologize on behalf of the shooter. That's what they used to say. But now they have come out, and I know they're still making excuses. They're trying to rely on that Muslim hero. But at least they're condemning that. Do you know why they're doing that? Why they're condemning? Because they know that the tide is turning. They know that the fatigue is growing. They know that people are getting sick and tired of their shenanigans. This demand of remigration, this demand to deport, mass deportations, is getting louder and louder in every single Western country. And thanks to Trump, it's happening on some scale as well. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Because this is what I have always said. The West is the greatest civilization humanity has ever come up with. I refuse to believe that a civilization as great as the one that took us to the moon, gave us AI, MRI machines, health advancements, cars, planes, rockets, everything, cannot just roll over and die. I refuse to believe that. And I think we are getting closer to that tipping point. There will come a point when mass deportations will begin. My only worry is I don't want good people to get caught up in that. And by good people, I mean good Muslims too. There are good Muslims. That guy showed you that there are good Muslims. He risked his life. He did get shot. No, don't listen to this BS propaganda. It's been confirmed by his family. He's been interviewed. His family's been interviewed on Australian TV. That guy is a Muslim. His name is Ahmed Al-Ahmed. He's a Syrian Muslim. And by the way, acknowledging that the hero was a Muslim does not weaken our argument. As I have said before, no host country that is inviting immigrants should be running these probabilistic tests that, okay, if we invite 1 million Muslims, then, maybe 1% of them are going to be terrorist risk. No, we expect zero terrorists, especially when we have a bigger pool of immigrants available who have almost next to zero chance of being terrorists. This is a dark day in Australian history. I do urge calm because I do believe that some action will be taken. I do understand that Australia and Australian authorities and Australian society is vastly different from the UK society. Until I lived in the UK, I used to think that Australia and UK are pretty similar. They're not. But at the same time, we do realize that for some reason, our lefty, woke politicians do not want to offend Muslims for some reason, or Islamists. So that is also a possibility. But let's wait and see what happens. Because Anthony Albanese, as useless as he is, he did say that we will take firm action. I don't know what that means. The only firm action that we need is to look at these people who've been chanting anti-Semitic slogans, anti-Western slogans, grab them, cancel their citizenships, deport them. We don't need them in Australia. We don't want any Israel-Palestine conflict playing out in the streets of Sydney and Melbourne or anywhere else in Australia. We don't want that. Australian Jews have never harmed anyone. Never. Not a single terrorist attack is attributed to Australian Jews. But, as always, there is one community that is a ticking time bomb. By the way, some Americans are saying that, gun control doesn't work. So in the wake of the Port Arthur massacre, the Australian government took away all guns from most Australians. Farmers and hunters, they could keep them. And that's how Sajid Akram, the main terrorist, retained those guns. He had licensed guns. So no, in Australia, you can have a gun, but you have to go to many gun ranges, show your capability with guns, handling firearms, and only then you can apply for a license. And then the Australian police determines whether you are fit enough to have a firearm or not. But it's very difficult to get. So there will be more gun control measures. That's what I'm expecting. But good Australian hunters are going to be punished. So I don't know what kind of action they're going to take, but let's wait and see. But Australia is very angry and they should remain angry. We should not let it become the new norm as the Brits have done. In Britain, yeah, somebody gets stabbed. No big deal, nothing to see here. The next day, move on. Their own mayor has said that terrorism is part and parcel of living in a big city. That's it. Nothing to see here. Don't complain. Something tells me Australia is different. Australia is not going to take it kindly. But let's wait and see.